Radio.
Salutations, my friends. Salutations. Wow, I have got a information-packed episode ready for you guys, and this was a bit of a tricky pickle trying to get it all together. But let me tell you, it is definitely going to be worth the wait. So let's see if we can try and go ahead and get our guest on. If you guys are unfamiliar with Shamanic philosophy, definitely go check his page out. For me, it is always fun having new people come on the show, because it's like, you're introducing your friends to your friends, and you know people are gonna like them. But let's see if we can get our guest Shamanic philosophy on for you guys. Adam, can you hear me?
EJ, you there? I can hear you.
Yes, I am here, my friend. How are you?
I'm beautiful, brother. How are you doing?
I'm above ground. I'm got people that care. We've got an awesome audience. We've got all the right things going for us, and now you're here, so it's even better.
It's beautiful, man. It could be a lot worse. It's a beautiful Monday. A lot of people have, having a case of the Mondays is like a cliche thing, but this has been kind of a magnificent Monday for me. And I hope everybody else out there is off to a great week, great start to their week as well.
Like I was saying beforehand, having people on the show, it's like introducing your friends to your friends. It's always like a blast. It is always a blast. So, for this to be the start of the week for me, it's perfect. It's awesome.
Well, it's cool because, you have an audience full of like-minded people. And one of the most beautiful things that I've found getting started in just the social media platform, about a year ago or so, or at least starting to get my hands around it about a year ago, I've just found so many amazing people, man. Just so many people that are like-minded and that are trying to wake up themselves and to wake up other people and to just share, not always uplifting ideas, but it's truth. We're all sort of a community of truth seekers, and the ultimate ideology of truth is that there is love in it, and love governs all of it, and you have to go look for it. It's not always pretty, especially a lot of awesome pages out there that are covering some of the really crazy stuff, like your page, in particular. You do such a beautiful job of showing some of the uglier stuff that we have to face as a society, and also a lot of the love. There's so much love in the world too, and it's just good to be thankful for that on a regular basis.
That's definitely something I've had to learn about, doing this, because, like you said, we are talking about some of the uglier underbelly parts of society, like the occult underground and everything else that goes with that. And it does kind of get taxing, but I've learned, having this kind of fellowship, having these kinds of conversations, like reaching out with with people like yourself, and literally like connecting with like-minded people. That's where the love is. That's where the progress is. We've been put in positions of disadvantage for so long that we think we have a misconstrued version of what love is, of a deeper. You learn a lot doing this as well. About the human condition, about like our situation, the times that we're in, and you really get the full picture. It's the compassion, it's the integrity, it's the love, it's the truth. You don't wake up, trying to day after day reach people. Some that you actually do reach, some that you don't. You don't wake up every day doing this, with a pessimistic heart. You do it out of love. Because you're going through the gauntlet, you're having to fight through the programming, the conditioning, and so much that it's like you really do understand the conditions, and really how at a deeper level we have to come from a place of understanding and compassion. And so that's really it. The Greeks have a word, or have a term. It's called agape love, and it's basically all-consuming, unconditional love. Because that's what we need to get through where we're at right now.
That word, this is such a synchronicity. I have never heard anyone else talk about the word agape, the Greek word agape, except for me. I've been talking about that word for years, and really defining the word, like just defining the word love as a definition has been a fascination of mine, and it was a driver in my early days of waking up and trying to get my hands around this whole bigger picture of truth, realizing that, there are so many different forms of love. You love your wife different than you love your kids, you love your dog different than you love your cat, you love your parents different than you love your siblings, and all those things you love differently than you do yourself. And you love, if you have a proper understanding of our position in the universe and our relation and connection to each other, then you should love strangers. But you don't love strangers the same way you do, your family. So that agape love, I heard that word a long time ago, and as a kid, I think, and I don't even remember now. It's been it's probably 20 years ago, and just to hear you say that and to open with that, man, is such a synchronicity. It's so cool to hear you talk about that word, because it's so true. One of the things, and I don't want to get off on a tangent too much here, but one of the things that I've been really fascinated with and sort of preoccupied with, and at times aggravated with, is that the limitations of our vocabulary, and especially in the English language, but language in general is prohibitive. But we, like I said, love. What does love mean? There's 10, 15 different kinds of love maybe that you have for different people in your life, and to talk about different definitions of different types of love is so cool. And there are so many other things. When I'm a big Terence McKenna fan, and when you hear him describe things, just the vernacular that he uses to describe things, the vocabulary he uses is so beautiful, and it's so rich, and it's so specific. I always say, be impeccable with your word, because with your words you create. And I really like the way that Terence McKenna used to talk about things in such specific terms. And I try to do that myself. And I think that if we could, he used to talk about if we could develop a vocabulary. We don't really have a vocabulary to talk about the meaningful spiritual things, We don't really have a very rich vocabulary to reach into and grab words to discuss metaphysical constructs or the things that really matter. Words that really encompass the definitions of specific words like love or enlightenment or knowledge, gnosis, nous. There are all these different words that the ancients used. The Greeks especially had, so many different words for knowledge, so many different words for love, so many different words for spirituality, and it's cool to get into all that stuff. And so that's kind of, I guess, not central to what I do in my work, but it's definitely a big component of it is creating, constructing a common vocabulary to use. I mentioned to you I'm working on a couple of books right now, and one of them is called Living Excited, and one of them is called Root of All Religions. And one of the first things that I do in those books is to get into constructing a common vocabulary that we can use to communicate with, because there are so many words that come with a loaded sort of definition or a connotation. Even I used to be a huge Richard Dawkins fan, and I watched Richard Dawkins and Deepak Chopra arguing. I guess really it was more Richard Dawkins attacking Deepak, but Dawkins was attacking Deepak's use of the word quantum, and what Deepak was talking about was like quantum healing, like healing at the subatomic level through intent and focus and all that. And Dawkins really didn't like him using that word that way, because he wanted this literal scientific application of the word quantum. He was really unhappy with that, and I realized when I saw that video probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago that vocabulary is so problematic, because everyone has their different idea of what the word quantum means. Everyone has their own idea of what the word spirituality means. And whenever you say spirituality, if you've got 10,000 people listening to you, then one person pictures a monk sitting on top of a rock on the beach, and one person has an image of some fireside tent revival in a Southern Baptist context or something. And there's so many different words or so many words that mean different things to different people. And establishing a common vocabulary or common ground that we can all communicate with is it's a big part of what I'm trying to do. It's really important, I think.
I think this might be the time, in the show where or actually probably intro, and introduce you to people, right? And the reason I joke about that is because, right? Hi, hello, everybody. This is the guest that we're having on. And the reason I put it to that is because vibes don't lie. The reason we're coming right out of the gate, talking about love, compassion, understanding, even vocabulary. What one person can do, like with the essence of simply their words and how they project themselves. I think that doesn't lie. And so for us to just naturally come right out of the gate and start talking about this type of stuff, that again just kind of shows the path that we're on. And I'll give people a little bit of a preface, for you. Like I said, let's do a proper intro. I laugh because, I think you contacted me sometime over the weekend, and I was supposed to do the On the Wake Up radio show, but some stuff happened. And then, you were entirely understanding, totally cool, and it was just out of the blue. And so to me, those kinds of things are messages from the universe. That's messages from like a deeper multidimensional aspect of things that are going on that we don't even know. Like we're stepping into this path or into this alignment, and it's allowing for different things to take place and take shape that we don't know. And it's simply because we're choosing to access this different type of energy, access this different type of reality, access this part of like what it means to really be awake to this type of stuff. For people that don't know, shamanic philosophy, I'm not sure if you would like for me to call you Adam or the shaman, but
Adam is just fine. There's a lot of shaman out there.
There are a lot of shamans out there. For people that don't know, Adam of Shamanic Philosophy, you guys can go find him on Instagram. He also has a YouTube, which I would definitely hope you guys go check out on his page, and you'll see this is why we had him on the show. But he talks about science and nature, psychedelic exploration, ancient wisdom and mysteries, alternative history, crystal theory, all kinds of different stuff. The mind, body, spirit connection. That's where I like to resonate. And what's even more beautiful, about you coming on in this capacity is we recently did a revisited episode of Project Grill Flame, Project Centerlane, and Project Sunstreak, where we talked about the psychoenergetic potential of humanity, how we're able to have these kinds of psychic spiritual gifts, but we've been in a position of disadvantage for so long that most people think it's hippie terms, or it's fake, or it's not real, when really, it's the opposite. It's hyper real. It is super real.
Yep.
That's exactly right. We have so many beautiful qualities to us and so many dynamic things going on in the human experience and the time that we're living in that it takes a full life to really understand it. Like it takes an entire lifetime to understand how awesome individuals can be. So that's why, at a deeper level, I did want to have you on to talk about these types of things. But if you could tell people about tell people about your YouTube and a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. So on the I started this. I want to kind of give you guys a little bit of a background so you understand maybe a map to the madness, because I'm all over the place, and I'm okay with that now. I've learned to embrace my insanity.
There you go.
There's an awesome YouTube video that I just did an Instagram live video the other day, and I showed everyone this. But there's an awesome TED Talk that this guy did, and it's the name of the TED Talk is called Shamanism, Psychosis, or Spiritual Awakening. And it's this guy that went around and studied shamanic cultures all over the place for 30 years. And the first experience that he had with a shaman was so intriguing to him that he made it a part of his life to keep doing it. And I think he actually sort of stumbled upon his first interaction with a shaman. But what he found was that the shaman that he met was he asked him, how did you get into being a shaman? How does one do this, right? There's no Craigslist for shaman. There's no want ads for this. How do you do it? And
I can't go to YouTube and try to figure out how to be a shaman.
yeah, it doesn't work exactly that way. But the answer that the person gave him was, well, when I was 13 years old, I started hearing voices, and I started seeing things, and interacting with stuff that wasn't there. And I was taken under the wing of this other shaman in the tribe or whatever. I can't remember. It might have been like up in Nepal or something like that. And so this person was taken under the wing of an older shaman, brought them in, and kind of coached them along the way of being a shaman. So as this guy in the TED Talk did this video, he said, throughout my life I've studied all these different shaman, and they all have the same kind of story. You go through life, you have these kids that are, in Western society would say that they're mentally, challenged or mentally disturbed, or they're mentally ill or whatever. And instead of viewing them as ill, in the shamanic cultures, they're considered gifted. We have gifted and talented programs in Western society that are highly inadequate. But in shamanic cultures, people who have these types of experiences are considered gifted. And so that's sort of where shamanism comes from. And so back to me, I was 5 years old, and I found this book on ancient mysteries. It was in my dad's stack of books, and it was actually a whole book set of different types of mysteries. And the one that stuck out to me, it was like 20 books, and I actually still have this set of books here at my house. But the one book that stuck out to me was the one that had a pyramid on the front with a sphinx in front of it, and it said Ancient Mysteries on the cover. And the other books in the set, you had like UFOs. God, I can't even remember all the different ones now. It's like witchcraft and shamanism and UFOs and ley lines and all this different stuff. But it was all this whole set full of mysterious books. So being like 5 years old, this is the first, this is my introduction into the world of reading as a 5-year-old. It's like, okay, here's Atlantis. Here you open up the book, and the first page there is Atlantis. The splendor of Atlantis, and then as you flip through, it's getting flooded and all this stuff, and then it's Egypt and all these things. And so my entire life was shaped by that experience, and I saw everything in my life from that point forward, from 5 years old on, through the lens of the occult and of ancient mysteries and of our history not being exactly what we were told. And later on discovered Graham Hancock when I was like 18 or 19. I'm 33 now, so 15 years ago, 14 years ago. Got into Coast to Coast AM. Mid-20s. Yeah, Coast to Coast is awesome. And I got into Greg Braden and found a lot of other people too. And was exposed to a lot of different kinds of ideas, and that's when really my waking up process I think kind of started, was in my early 20s, and was also in church and a lot of that stuff, which I found spiritually and intellectually inadequate growing up, but was exposed to a lot of different religious viewpoints because my family wasn't religious, and so for me it was always an intellectual pursuit, and looking back now it's probably a spiritual pursuit as well, but for me, I wanted answers, and I had questions. And most precocious kids or curious kids, I think, are kind of that way. And so I found a lot more of those answers in the conscious community in my early 20s. And I used to actually run a website and had an internet radio show 7 or 8 years ago. It was more focused on what we would probably call conspiracy theories and stuff like that, which are super important to understand, whether you subscribe to them or not. There's a lot of truth there. But really big into that stuff, the Rothschild thing and government cover-ups and all that kind of stuff. And I've owned and operated an information technology company for the last 10 years and given me a lot of insight into how technology works and information security and that kind of thing. And so a lot of the stuff that was the stories that were being told on TV just always stuck out to me as being absurd. Things like emails, like 33,000 emails getting accidentally deleted. And I just watched how even people in my family, my parents and stuff, they're just like, oh, well, those emails got deleted. It just happens. Or Google.
How convenient.
Yeah, it just happens, right? I mean, or one of my favorites was when the Google Maps vans were driving around and just accidentally happened to pick up everybody's Wi-Fi information and hack their Wi-Fi networks and steal their personal info. And that was totally an accident. Right? These things you can accept that these are accidents if you're completely ignorant of how technology works. And so I started to see, just by virtue of having a little bit more of an insight into the information technology and security world, there really was something sinister going on. There was a lot of funky stuff going on, and that caused me to look further up the totem pole and want to understand more about why these things were happening. Like, what's the prime driver behind this? Because the obvious answer is greed and money. But then when you get to the top of the pyramid of the greed and the money, and you realize, like, these guys have so much money that they can buy and destroy and rebuild everything in the world 3,000 times over, per day for the rest of it, eternity. Like, money the answer isn't money at this point. There's a deeper battle going on. And so I was always researching psychedelics. I was always really fascinated by the stories that people told and the books that I read and the experiments that were done. And the concept of psychedelics was always really fascinating to me. But I didn't jump off into that pool. I experimented a little bit as a teenager through a different lens, obviously. But as an adult, I didn't really ever take that leap until about 2 years ago. And I jumped in with both feet and got really into Terrence McKenna and his brother Dennis McKenna and Joe Rogan and Rick Strassman, the doctor professor at University of New Mexico that did all the DMT research back in the 90s and came out with that
for the
the
spirit
book
molecule.
and the movie, the spirit molecule, exactly. So I got really into that, studying DMT and ayahuasca and psilocybin and iboga and all the different things. Graham Hancock has a book called Supernatural. Your listeners might know who Graham Hancock is, but he spent 2 years of his life going all over the world, trying out like every psychedelic substance on the planet. And psychedelics, it's important to understand, psychedelics are central to the role of or to the culture of a shamanic civilization. Tried.
Before we go on, I definitely want to jump on that, because I've talked about how one of the most profound things I've heard Graham Hancock say is how plants, things like ayahuasca, plants and things like this of this nature, they are really forms of advanced technology. Now that took me like a few years to like really conceptualize, like, what does that mean? Like, how can something biological be technological? And that's because what we think of as technology is really kind of crude and basic. Now, technology that we see happening these days, and if anything, we're playing catch up to ancient archaeology, to the ancient mysteries and everything else, is technology is supposed to work in tandem with the spirit. That's how you really like unlock technology. It's not supposed to be used like, oh, I touched it this way, so therefore it works that way. That's very crude and very, very rudimentary. Advanced technology and the technology that we're actually supposed to be working towards is supposed to work in harmony with humanity. So hearing you talk about that, that's talk about Graham, talk about DMT, ayahuasca, and things of this nature. You're speaking my language, man. And real quick I'll let you have it right after this. You had mentioned how, people in other cultures and civilizations, they look at people who have either autism or who do hear different types of voices and things of this nature. They see them as what we call today indigo children or crystal children, because they're basically interpreting different types of signals and different types of things that are going on. We're merely filters for everything else that's going on, and for people who operate in that frequency or in that mindset, it's a lot harder and sometimes easier for them to cipher through this information. So everything you're saying, man, is spot on. Please continue.
No, for sure. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. No, the indigo child thing was a concept I didn't really know anything about until a couple of years ago, and I won't even get off into that yet. But a lot of what I do is my research work is correlating different personality attributes and characteristics, and correlating things like sense of humor and sexuality, intelligence and open-mindedness and closed-mindedness. And I'm always looking through everything through the lens of the lens of a left-right brain sort of structure. Left brain characteristics, right brain characteristics, and maybe your listeners are familiar with that concept. If not, plenty of places to look it up. But looking at that kind of stuff, what psychedelics did for me, among many, many other things, was having my first really transformative psychedelic experience, opened my eyes and my mind to the interconnection of all things and all people. The energy flow that takes place between you and I in this conversation, and all the audience and all of our friends and family that we interact with. There's an energy flow that takes place, and it's not an energy flow that anyone's really measuring. We measure calories, we count miles and hours and minutes and light years and microbial volume and all this kind of stuff. But we're not measuring, to me, what some of the most important energy is, which is the impact that we have on the feelings and emotional state and the life experiences of others. You imagine if I wrote a really nice note. I'm so stoked about this trend that I've heard about. My kids told me about it, and I've seen it happening, where people are just taking a rock and they're writing a nice note on it, and they leave it laying around for someone to find. And I think that's such a cool trend. Have you heard of that?
No, but that's pretty smart.
Yeah, it's really cool. And my girlfriend and I were hiking up in Oklahoma, up in the Ouachita Mountains, and we walked into a little corner store, and there was a little rock by the door, and it said, "You are loved," like on marker. It just had it written on this sort of a baseball-sized cobblestone or a pebble or whatever, and we thought that was super cool. And then I got back home, and one of my kids mentioned that was a thing out of nowhere. So sort of a synchronicity there too. But there's no system in place. There's no scientific community dedicated to observing and measuring that kind of an energy flow. Someone wrote that on a rock and left it there, and that made my day. It made my girlfriend's day. There's an energetic transfer that took place there. Whenever you smile at somebody at the bank, if the person behind the counter is having a rough day and you smile at them, make them laugh, there's an energy transfer that takes place there. And I would argue that it might be the most important and the most worthwhile energy transfer to measure as human beings, and we don't do it. There's no scientific method for doing that. And so 2 years ago, after my first big, what Terrence McKenna would call a heroic dose of psilocybin mushrooms, I came out of that experience and said, "This is what I have to do with my life. I've got to take what I've seen and learned and constructed in my head and put this out for everybody else in the world to see and to understand." And so I started developing a sort of a scientific model of how this energy transfer works by categorizing different personality attributes and correlating those with behaviors, and even correlating those into psychology and the background of different people, your family life and that kind of thing, your upbringing, your environment, socioeconomic factors. And it sounds very, very complicated, but it's not, because people are not as complicated as we think. There are only a handful of different factors that play into people's development over time and all that stuff. But the more I looked into the complexity and the beauty of all these interconnections, the more I realized that the ancients had it figured out way better than we do. Like they've been on that level, thousands of years ago. And like you said, we're just now starting to rediscover a lot of this ancient wisdom and these, the ancient technologies that these people had in place thousands and thousands of years ago, which have been lost now to materialism and literalism and empirical science and stuff like that. So that's when everything came full circle for me, was when I realized that everything from astrology and spirituality and hermeticism and all the ancient mysteries and the ancient wisdom teachings and stuff like that this stuff was really describing a much more holistic view of not just individual health, but the collective health of the whole human population, and how to live in harmony with the planet, with each other, with ourselves. And this New Age movement, as we call it now, a New Age movement, it's really a very old age movement. It's like the oldest movement in the world. It's new to us, but it's just a resurgence of ancient traditions and ancient philosophies. And these things weren't cooked up out of nowhere. They were discovered by people who set out to find the answers in the first place. The ancient Egyptians and a lot of other cultures, I'm sure, they didn't have Steve Jobs, they didn't have Bill Gates, and they didn't have Warren Buffett, and they didn't have, Jeff Bezos, and they didn't have Elon Musk. They didn't have people making rocket ships and iPhones and banking policy. They took their best and brightest, which may not have been the Bill Gates type of mindset at that time. That may not have been. They may not have considered. He might have been the mentally ill kid in that in that time. The really left brain, materialistic sort of mental configuration. That guy might not have been the smartest kid in the class, but he is in our culture because that's just how Western society works. But they took their best and brightest, and Graham has talked about this, Graham Hancock. They took their best and brightest and they put them to work studying the afterlife and studying spirituality and studying what really makes us happy, what makes us who we are, how is everything connected. I mean, the things that really matter, right? I mean, not how can I get GPS on my Apple Watch without having my iPhone within 50 yards? You know what I mean? If you just think about the
selfies
difference
and things like that.
Oh yeah. The triviality of what we've gotten into with materialism is just insane when you put it on a scale next to the things that really matter as human beings. It's just incredible. So I've been developing this sort of model, and along the way I've met just some amazing people, yourself included, and through Instagram it's been awesome. And that's what I've spent the last couple of years doing, is working on the books and on this model, on cognitive exercises for synthesizing or I guess you could say just sort of creating synesthesia in the mind. There's a neural connectivity condition called synesthesia, in which the different parts of the brain talk to each other and connect with each other and work off of each other in ways that are, we would say, unnatural or abnormal. And there are a couple of examples of people.
You can smell sound and you can hear flavors and things like that.
Exactly. And so again, as a kid, I found a guy named Daniel Tammet, and you can look him up, and he wrote a book called Born on a Blue Day, and he's a synesthesic, and he's, a very, very interesting guy, but he can recite pi to 25,000 digits. He learned the Icelandic language in 3 hours to a fluent conversational level. He can do 4x4 multiplication in his head, all kinds of cool stuff. But when he describes a color or describes a number, if you say, 524,368, he sees it as this amalgamation of different colors and shapes and landscapes in his head. And that was so fascinating to me. And so that's, 20 years ago or whatever, I discovered that guy. Now, what I've spent the last couple of years trying to work on is developing exercises by which we can create a sort of synesthesia in our minds. And again, that comes from, was inspired by my experiences with psychedelics, particularly mushrooms, because, you can hear, you can almost hear light frequencies. If you're out there on a full moon, you can hear the moonlight coming down. If you're on mushrooms, you can, you can see sound waves. There's all these different things that happen, it's a whole different realm of sensory perception than what we normally walk around with. And you're confronted, if you have one of these experiences, you're confronted by the reality that we really don't perceive nearly as much as there is to perceive. There's a lot more going on around us, the waves in the air, light waves and sound waves and everything else, even smells and all that. And so I'm trying to develop a whole booklet of cognitive exercises that you can use to get different parts of your brain to work together so that we can enhance our cognitive skills. One of the things is, just as a quick example, learning to do math using color schemes, just like we use like a paint by number. You got a paint by number, and it's like a picture of a duck in a pond or whatever, and they just have numbers on it, and you paint by number. And so I call this solving by color. It's the exact opposite. It's an inversion. And you label the subcomponents of a complex equation with colors, and you imprint these in your mind's eye, in your third eye. You imprint these. You wipe out everything that you just did and just imprint a red or a blue or a green label or whatever onto the sum of a certain sub-equation, and then you store that in your mind for 30 seconds from now when you're done with the next, and you add these color-coded sums and stuff together. So just doing different types of things in your mind and using different parts of your mind to do tasks instead of just adding up a bunch of numbers in your head. That just uses one part of your brain. Colors come from a different place. Shapes come from a different place. There are a lot of mnemonic techniques that can be learned and developed to create a sort of synesthesia-like situation. And so it just goes back into everything that I'm trying to work on, which is helping people to be less stressed, helping people to be happier, helping people to be more organized and more productive in their lives. And I realize that people struggle with, everyone does, with the stress of organization, and the stress of problem solving. And so what can we do to try to develop and enact different systems of organization and problem solving and productivity in our lives? So the Instagram platform was sort of my first step into social media. I've never been a social media guy, and I started the Instagram platform back in May of last year, I think, and really didn't get it. Really didn't understand it, not the components of it technically, but just the social components of it, what makes it work and what doesn't. And I think I didn't know what I was trying to do with it, really. And the more I, worked on it and talked to people, and the more people I met, and then the more that I went through my own journey outside of social media, obviously, just the more I went through my own journey of finding truth and waking up, the more I woke up and the more that I understood truth and the more that I lived in truth, the more that came through in my Instagram stuff. And Instagram's obviously it's a short form. It's a short form thing. Go ahead.
No, you're 1,000% correct. I tell people all the time, like, coming into this, I definitely have like my own, connotations. I have my own, preconceived notions of like what truth is, like what is real, what is normal, like what have they been hiding from us. But it's not just like the information that they're hiding from you. It's the lifestyle that they're hiding from you. It's the mindset that they're hiding from you. It is the truth that they're hiding from you. But it's because we have to enact it every single day. That different truths or different types of truths are revealed to us. It's like just because we know that there are, just because we know the Rothschilds are there, just because we know all these people are there, at a deeper level, we're playing into the reality that they're trying to create, simply because of the control over our energy, over our expressions, over our creative reality that they have access to. And it's because if we continue to fall into that they will win. It's because we're not having these types of conversations about, how to look inward, how to learn different tips and tricks on how to stop the ego, on how to stop pride, on how to stop the flesh from overcoming. And I think, that's just something I wanted to point out. The fact that we are literally finding ourselves pull away from things of the flesh, things like the ego, and having to look within to find like the deeper spiritual truths that have been systematically removed from us. So I think it's fantastic that you're coming out with a book or with a kind of tips and tricks kind of platform for that. Social media, and I'll say this and I'll let you have it again. Social media is a double-edged sword. We can either get caught up in it, or we can literally use it as a tool for a wider expression to use it as like a megaphone or a microphone to send out that kind of message. That's all it is. They are using social engineering against us with social media, and we have the tools ourselves to create this kind of reality to make a better world, to talk about these types of solutions. So just hearing you talk about it still, man, continue on. You're right on point.
No, that's it. Social media is a tool like anything else, right? I mean, you can use a hammer to drive a nail into a board to build a church or build a home, or you can use a hammer to hit somebody with it, And social media is no different. And it's important to talk about that. And I want to for just a second, because what I I've talked about this on my live videos and stuff, and I think on the podcast a couple of times, but angry echo chambers. Angry echo chambers, right? You go peruse social media, and you find these angry echo chambers, right? It's either people that hate Donald Trump, and 100% of their posts are Donald Trump is a retard, he's an idiot, he's the devil. Or it's the other end, it's, Hillary's the devil, this and that, whatever. I call these angry echo chambers because I honestly don't see the point. I really don't. And maybe that's narrow-minded or short-sighted of me, but I don't think so because I used to kind of be that way, years and years ago. I get it. But it's people who just want to share their disdain or their disgust or their resentment with other people, and then have those people sort of reverberate and echo it back at them. Just an angry echo chamber is all it is. And I talk to a lot of these people because I know a few of them that are really cool, good people, but you can see the anger in them. You can just see the demons of resentment and misunderstanding that they're saddled with. And I try to help some of them. It's what social media does is you can create a lot of division with it, and you can reverberate anger and resentment and all that stuff, and you can just build a big mass of negative vibration, and it just sits there and metastasizes and grows and reverberates into more and more of this magnanimous disharmonic state. And then you just stumble across it when you're perusing your Instagram feed or the Explore feed or whatever, and you just see this big massive radioactive cloud of negativity. And you look, there might be 1,500 comments in there or something, and people are just blasting everybody. Everybody's angry. It's like a hornet's nest. It's like a shit fest.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do, I saw that early on, and what I wanted to do, and what I feel very happy with having done so far, is to build a community that wasn't like that. To build a community of like-minded people, of whatever background or whatever, who are looking for something positive and looking for something enlightening. When I first started this platform, I'm definitely happy to say that it's in its final iteration. There won't be any substantial changes to the Shamanic philosophy platform at this point. We found our center. And everybody associated with Shamanic philosophy now, we know that we found our home here. But when we first started, it was the E3 podcast, and that was Explore, Enlighten, and Evolve. And that sort of philosophy or that outlook, that goal, that objective is still there, to help others understand truth in all of its form and to change the world through love and understanding of ourselves. Understanding of the world and understanding each other, and to show that nature and spirit aren't, like you said earlier, they're not just these woo-woo, concepts that are relegated to mystics and shaman, but they're kind of central to living a happy, healthy, well-balanced life, even in the modern day, And that's really, if you break down the Shamanic philosophy name, I mean, the shamanism is obviously, understanding the spirit realm, the material realm, and all of the powers and factors within those, and helping to, a shaman always helps guide their tribe in the ways of the spirit and the material world, and helping them to find balance in between. And then philosophy is about asking and answering and exploring the biggest, most important questions in life. So shamanic philosophy seemed like a good left and right brain balance thing. If you think of shamanism being sort of your right brain and philosophy being your left brain, it's almost like that. I discovered that YouTube channel Spirit Science after the fact, after I came up with the name Shamanic philosophy. And again, what do you have? Spirit and science. This is right brain and left brain. And you'll see this theme, all over the place.
And I'm right there with you. Whatever the whole, you'll hear me. People will hear me on previous episodes. I talk about it all the time. The entire reason I started the podcast and the show, and the page itself, is because I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to try to find, people like yourself, people like Third Eye Opener, people like Forbidden Knowledge, people like Serious Knowledge, people like KB Visions. I wanted to have real conversations with people who actually got the different and diverse things that we are going up against, not only generationally, but what we're going through now, and as well as coming up with solutions. The entire platform, everything that I've literally created, it is to house these kinds of discussions. In my personal life, I didn't see people really having, deep conversations about how to move forward. And the only time they did is, whenever they were either on psychedelics or whenever they were drunk. And I was like, well, what is that about? Why is it that we have to be into an altered state of mind in order for us to actually care about either one another, care about the world, care about how we got here? Why is it that we have to have why do we have to have inhibition taken from us for us to actually care? And so my whole thought process was, well, why don't you start a show, have a whole bunch of people on, cover a whole bunch of different topics, and just shoot the breeze. To me, it wasn't that hard of a decision to make. I think, what a lot of it was me having to get over, the whole, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist, or, oh, you're a dirty hippie, or, oh, you're trying to be pseudoscience, or, oh, you're trying to be semi-political. It's no, this is labeling. This is categorizing. This is trying to define the undefinable. We're trying to define the unknown. We're supposed to have these kinds of conversations. We're supposed to look into ourselves and really say, hey, what have you found in there? Oh, that's awesome. I found this here as well. Hey, is there a correlation? Is there a commonality here? This is that understanding that a lot of people have kind of forgotten. And so that's why, having people on like yourself, because having people on like yourself, it allows for us to still look at things in different ways. That's why I like to have, the litany of guests that we have on, to not only show people it is okay to talk about these types of things, but to also explain this is what happens if you commit, if you become serious in your truth seeking, if you become serious in your research, if you're really trying to look into the inner verse. That's how we actually move forward. Everybody thinks a revolution happens, you're carrying a shotgun and you have a bandana over your face. Yeah, that's what Hollywood wants it to be because they can kill you. That's not how a revolution happens. It starts inward. If we want change outward, we have to start inward, and we have to have, I say this all the time as well, conversations saved a generation. We have to have conversations about what it is we're doing in order for us to be effective. And so, hearing you talk about this type of stuff, it's, again, spot on. Because I think a lot of people, and you'll even have this amongst the conscious community, air quotes, and amongst the woke folks, air quotes. You'll have people that are using these numbers to try to justify, their follower count, their like count, and things like that, to try to justify what they think of as conscious. To me, I even hate the term, or I strongly dislike the term or the phrase "stay woke." Because it doesn't do it justice. Every day I feel like I'm learning something new from either posting on the page or my own research, or even just subtle things like speaking the kind of reality that I want into existence, and then having people like you on, or talking to people like Connecting Consciousness, or networking with people in Australia, just very subtle things that I have learned. And it's because you go through this process of where you have to unlearn everything that you've been taught and then literally relearn what it is that's going on. It's so crazy, and I don't know how else to explain it other than just that. And whenever we say just stay woke, that really boils it down. That really it decentralizes the power somehow. It doesn't do it justice, and the only way I can look at it is by, again, operating from a state of compassion and understanding. This is where these people are. That's what they understand. It's upon us to, again, advance their research, advance their learning, and, again, talk about these types of things. Because you got to think, while people are having these revelatory ideas, things that are just mind-blowing, well, what are they going to do? They need to have somebody to bounce it off of. They need to have fellowship with somebody. They need to have some kind of kinship to where they know they're not alone. That's, again, part of a deeper understanding of the oneness that we all have inside of us.
No, that's exactly right on so many points. The stay woke thing is another one of these sort of double-edged things, right? I mean, it's become cliche to just say stay woke or to throw a hashtag stay woke onto your post because you think that you know something that a lot of people don't, right? It's almost like a shield that people hide behind whenever they say something that could be utter bullshit, right? And then they just throw up a hashtag stay woke. And so now any opponents to what I just said, they're just indoctrinated sheep, or they're ignorant, or they need to do more research. And it's just become really trendy for people to throw that up there. I see a lot of things. In fact, I don't usually do a lot of like selfie videos and post them to my page. I don't even do a lot of them and put them on my story, but I'll occasionally do them on my story. But I actually did like a 60-second clip on the stay woke phenomenon like 2 months ago. And I just got fed up, and I just was reading a bunch of garbage on my Instagram feed, and I had to post it, and I felt like it was important enough to actually put it on my feed. You could go back and find it somewhere. But it's like, we just got to stop it, man. Like, it's kind of cool that the concept of being woke or awakened or enlightened or Gnostic or whatever, I prefer the term, being Gnostic or having gnosis, just because everything goes back to I'm an archaeology or a history nerd, so I mean the Gnostics were the people that I think we relate with the most in recorded history. But it's kind of cool that Gnosticism, modern Gnosticism, is actually popular enough that there's a hashtag about it. That there's like a stay woke hashtag that at least says that they're on the fringes of culture somewhere. There's a number of people that are becoming aware that obtaining knowledge is a thing. In this day and age, it's almost like I feel like we were on the verge of idiocracy, and I think we still need to be careful that we don't get back on that track. But I mean, the fact that stay woke is even a hashtag, even if people are misusing it and stuff, it at least is an indicator to me that the conscious community is gaining traction, that global consciousness is rising, as it has in the very distant past in these what seems to be these sort of cyclical developments of human consciousness collectively. But it is something that people hide behind it.
And what I find, myself is like I have to, because we are in people's lives in this capacity, I've learned that I've had to at a certain level, I don't want to say like absolve myself, but I've had to dissolve what I think is me and then realize what is us. How do we move forward? Progress is whenever we all start making, and I know I just talked smack about the stay woke. It's like we said again, a double-edged sword. People have to understand that now consciousness is becoming trendy, but there's a good and bad part with that. But it's the fact that people want to know more. That's the important part. Whenever we really start to like separate self from us, that's whenever we start to learn more. Like I've had some people I've talked to privately, message them. We've had conversations. They say that their people, or their followers, or the listeners, the readers, they have to divvy out truth to them in small doses. It's like, well, that might be what you might have needed, but people as a human, people having a human experience, we are all different and beautiful in some way. Sometimes you have to push, sometimes you have to pull, sometimes you have to give, sometimes you have to take. But I think what we all have to learn is like we are a conscious living organism that always requires this type of growth. And if we decide to say that I have all the information, I know all that there is, that's whenever we start to lose. That's whenever we cut ourselves from the source. We're supposed to be learning something different every day. And I think that whenever we act as if we have all the answers, as if we are the unrivaled arbiters of truth, as if we were the mainstream media or something like that, that's whenever we lose. I think if we act in a state of continual curiosity, that's where success lies. I mean, like you said, with even with your name, the shamanic philosophy, literally diving into what drives us, what is it that moves us forward. I think that's where, again, we'll find solutions. But I hear you, man, and I think what's even crazier too is people are starting to see this at a subtle level as well. I don't want to say we're hitting critical mass, but I think people are really starting to get the picture of, well, hold on now, we're not being given the full story about what's happening. We're also not being given the full story of what has happened, and we also don't know what is going to happen. And acting in that capacity, in a state of ignorance, that's what's got a lot of people kind of scared enough to wake up from their slumber and being able to, again, be in people's lives in this capacity and to take a part in somebody else's waking up experience. You know, that's phenomenal. Like, I can only imagine how you felt talking and meeting Graham Hancock. Like, shoot, that would make my year, being able to talk to somebody, you know, in that capacity.
That was a life-changing experience, man. And I'll tell you something crazy about that too. So, like I said, when I started this Instagram thing back in May, I think, really, or maybe it was June. It was June of last year. I got to like 150 followers, and I really didn't get it, you know. And I was trying to be something that I thought was, it's like the Batman thing. It's like the hero that Gotham needs, not the one that it, you know, wants or whatever. I don't remember, but
not the hero it deserves.
Yeah, whatever it was. You know, I was trying to not be. I wasn't trying to be false at all, but I was trying to be a version of myself that I thought was needed. You know, the information that was in my head that I thought was what people wanted. You know, being a kind of a nerd of all shapes and sizes in my own mind. You know, I could put out.
I hear you.
You know, I could put. I'm sure. Yeah, a lot of people listening to this are going to get that. You know what I mean? You're not alone. You're not alone, guys. You know, I thought, well, do people want to? Do they want to hear about neuroscience and consciousness? Or do they want to hear about all of my, you know, my studies and research into ancient civilizations and ancient technology and alternative archaeology? Is that what they want to hear? Or do they want to hear about mindfulness and meditation? Or do they want to hear more about parenting? Or do they want to hear more about politics, geopolitics, and current events? I mean, you know, I was struggling with all of this. And all, along the way, I had my girlfriend and friends and family and people who, you know, knew me and knew what I was into, all the things that I was into well enough that they were going, dude, just be yourself. Put it all out there. Just put your brain on a platter and give it to the world and see what happens. And it took me a while to do that. But when I met Graham, craziest story ever. So my girlfriend and my kids and I, we were going hiking up in Arkansas, in the Ozarks, and we went up there for the weekend. And we were going to this. There's a place called Crater of Diamonds State Park, and you can take the kids out there and go mine for diamonds and gems and stuff like that, and crystals. And being hippie people, that's what we do. You know, as a good hippie should. You know, on the way to go hiking, you go stop at the crystal mine. And so, as soon as we get there, you know, what else would you do? So as soon as we get there, Ashley, who she's on Instagram as well. You guys should follow her. It's ash.sensation. Which I thought was clever. She's a beautiful human being. And whenever we pulled up at the place, she said, hey, I think Graham is in Arkansas this weekend. And I was like, oh, my God, he is in Arkansas. He's at the Earthkeeper Conference. We just happened to be in Arkansas. That's interesting. She said, you've got to send him an email. So it didn't take much convincing for me. So I send him an email, and I just put it out there. I'm like, listen, man, we got to meet. Here's who I am. Here's what I'm about. We got to meet. And so he responds. I sent him this email at like 11 p.m. after we pulled up and set up camp and everything. And I sent him an email. Within an hour, Graham Hancock responds to me. And he says, hey, you know, I've only got like 10 or 15 minutes. I can meet with you this weekend. I'm interested in what you have going on. And I just shared some of my research with him and some other things, and offered my assistance as a research assistant on his upcoming book. And so he responds within an hour. We go to Little Rock the next day, and I meet with him. Absolutely life-changing experience. But he's the most genuine human being I've ever met in my life. I don't know if it's just the 50 ayahuasca sessions he's done, or years of traveling the world and meeting people all over the world, but I've never met a kinder, warmer, more sincere human being in my life. And I come from a mother who has the biggest heart and the biggest spirit and soul of anybody I've ever met. But Graham Hancock is just as real as it gets. And he didn't give me 10 minutes. He gave me about 35 minutes. And we got to just sit there at a table, just he and I in the quiet, and just talk. And I laid out for him everything that I had been working on and my own personal journey. And he told me right then and there, he said, I could absolutely use you. I'm going back home to England, and I'm going to be working on this book. And I'm going to need some boots on the ground, someone who knows the American Southwest and who has the means to get out there and go check on some of these sites for me and stuff like that. And so we've been in contact since then. We exchange emails, every once a month or something like that. And that day, when I came back to camp up in Arkansas, my life changed forever. And I went from having 150 Instagram followers that day to now I've got, I think, 19,000, 3.5 months later. And it was because of the truth and the direction that I gained from that interaction and the things that he said to me and the faith, the potential that he expressed that he saw in me. It gave me belief in myself, and that just further reinforced my whole idea, from the outset, was that believing in yourself and trusting in that belief is one of the most important and empowering things that we can do, and you really can create your own reality and fulfill your own destiny and have your own vision come to life right before your eyes. You just have to believe in yourself. And it took me meeting my lifelong hero for me to get right. I had to hear it from the horse's mouth before I believed it. But I believe that we can build a community of people that can change the world. I think that we can teach people that education matters, the right kind of education, which is real education. Like you said, understanding what did happen, what is happening, what will happen, and looking into our past and understanding different ways of doing things. Like you said earlier, a lot of the problems that we have, a lot of the truth that's hidden from us isn't even necessarily what's going on. It's not who's in control of what. A lot of the truth, the really important truth that's hidden from us, is just what kind of a mindset is it possible to have? What kind of an outlook on the world is it possible to have as an individual and as a society? As human beings, we're people. We imitate what we see. That's what culture is. It's a spiraling, systematic imitation of each other. And what we see is materialism and division. And there are certain ways of doing things that people in the past had worked out that are a lot more stable. It's a lot healthier and happier way to live your life. If you look at some cultures like ancient Egypt, understanding the balance between masculine and feminine, which is, again, right brain, left brain, masculine, feminine.
Yep.
Understanding that type of stuff.
Isn't that everything you're saying is perfect? I wanted to get your opinion on things like synchronicity, but I just kind of wanted to jump on the fact that you're talking about, the divine. I think it's the divine female, and I forget what the masculine is. Is it?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
There's two different. The idea behind it is there's like two different energies that are working within you that you're kind of like supposed to work together. It's like the divine feminine and the sacred masculinity. Yeah, there you go. The divine female energy and the sacred masculinity. And I think what's happened, is we've been kind of taken away from that, but we'll come back to that later. I just wanted to get your opinion on things like synchronicity, speaking your reality into existence. What are your thoughts on that? And we'll come back to the divine female and the sacred masculine.
Yes, speaking things into existence is unbelievably simple and real and measurable in every way. What starts as a thought will then create words, and then words, when you speak them out loud, will eventually create action if you follow the right path. And what I heard someone say the other day, put pictures of your dreams, surround yourself with pictures of your dreams. And right now we're working on, as of today, in full force, we finally kicked off this project that has been about a year in the making of planning and development, an online store for conscious products and lifestyle stuff, everything from clothing and jewelry and crystals and candles and essential oils and lotions and everything that you can imagine, and trying to bring in a lot of different small business vendors. I mean, people in the conscious community that are making stuff on Instagram that we've run into that we're impressed with, people who are just good people with a good spirit, and giving those people an outlet. And we want to make this online store like the Cabela's or the Bass Pro Shops of conscious living. And that all started with speaking that into existence. And we took the idea, when this idea occurred to me last night, that today was the day that it needed to kick off, and I'll spare everybody the reasons why today is the ordained day from the universe that it needed to happen. But it was, the universe has been smiling on us, and today was the day. Today is the singularity that we've reached, and everything begins from here. But I typed this stuff out on my phone, I printed it off, and I said, okay, we're launching this store by the middle of this summer. And so I printed out this little thing that says, hey, we're launching this by midsummer 2018. And we put that up on the mirror in the bathroom. And then I put it on the home screen of my phone. Surrounding yourself with your dreams is so key. And you don't start doing that until you start speaking it into existence, right? I mean, words are the first step into creating your new reality. You can keep something in your head all day long, and that's great. You can dwell on something all day long, and that's awesome. It's important to think about the things and visualize the things that you want. The abracadabra thing, with my words I create. And, it's important to keep your words positive, for sure. But as far as speaking into reality what your dreams are, it's the first step you have to take to creating your own reality, for sure.
I think what a lot of people end up having, a tough time with is, when you do a lot of the research, when you're first coming into this, you go to YouTube or you go to Google or you go to DuckDuckGo, where you go into the dark web and you try to find different parts of information. You have a lot of people that tell you their versions of truths, and then you have all kinds of different things that go on. What I'm basically trying to say is that they condemn a lot of these types of practices simply because of how they've been proven time and time again throughout different civilizations and generations to be true. And so they'll chastise things like, speaking your reality into existence, manifesting your world with your words. They'll say, oh, that's demonic. They'll say this is messed up. You're practicing Satanism. And it's like, no, not really. What's actually Satan? What they do, and this is how crazy it all is. What they do is they invert things. They invert it because it's not natural. It's unnatural for us to be doing a lot of the different things that we're doing today. But I just wanted to point that out because you're on point. This is why they hide information, and this is why coming into your own, waking up, and then at the same time staying woke. You have to understand that the vigilance it requires to constantly upgrade, or to, as you hear people say, raise your vibration, enlighten your mind, things of this nature. It's very real. But that's why they've taken steps to systematically disenfranchise us from our power. So I wanted to touch on another thing real quick, but before we do, what are your thoughts on, things like the divine female and the sacred masculine energy? These are, as you're saying, the left and the right brain, different energies that we have within us that we can call upon. What are your thoughts on that?
Gosh, I could go forever, but I'll try not to. The masculine and feminine energies exist at every level, from the individual to the familial level, to the community level, to the national level, to the global level, to the universal level. And it's very hard to talk about all these things without getting in, at least touching on astrology and things like the I Ching. But they're all there, and it's sometimes hard for me to collect my thoughts and wrap all this stuff up into a nice linear fashion, because that's just not the way my brain works. All this stuff is interlinked in my mind's eye when I'm talking about it. These are all one, they're all parts of a great big whole. But at the individual level, balancing out your masculine and feminine energies is it all starts. Every spiral in your life starts within yourself. And everything in life is a relationship. Every relationship is a spiral. What the energy you put in is the energy you get out, and then you have a new launching platform once you get that feedback in that relationship, and then you have a new energy input to put into that relationship. Anyway, it's a spiral, and balancing out your masculine and feminine energies is so key at that level, at the individual level, right? Just understanding the left brain and the right brain, the masculine and feminine thing. Good example for me would be, for 10 years of my life, working in a very corporate environment, a very business-driven, and on top of that, a technology company within a corporate environment in the business world. It doesn't get more left brain than that, I assure you, right? We are designing network schemes and hospital system information systems and dealing with business people who are all typically pretty left-brained in that arena, financing companies and fund management companies and just really big corporate agencies, very left-brained. Having sort of gained some perspective on that world and the world in general over the last couple of years from my own perspective, I've kind of been able to get myself into more of a balanced place in life. I can tell you that, and I've been able to share this with a lot of, at least several of the people who I've worked with over the last 12 or 13 years in that world, and they've found it to be profound as well. But getting out of that that problem-solving, architecturally minded sort of mind state and getting into a spiritual, artistic, creative mind state. That's something that on my podcast. J.C. Abbott is a guy who has been instrumental in getting this whole thing off the ground. J.C.'s been on the podcast a few times and is sort of behind the scenes and helping me to develop the web platform, the YouTube stuff, and a lot of the production stuff that we're doing going forward. But J.C.'s a brilliant guy, and he's an artist, he's a musician, he's a graphic designer, and we've talked about this extensively on the podcast, but if you take the time to learn to play a musical instrument, or you take the time to even start drawing, even if you're not a great artist, not a good drawer, go draw, go do some sketches, watch some YouTube videos on how to do some basic sketches, take a painting class, write some poetry. And in my view, exercising the right brain even just starts with, jotting down your thoughts. Even if it's like keeping a journal, just putting your thoughts on paper. You would be amazed at the balance that you can find by just putting your thoughts down on paper and then analyzing them. And it's what you mentioned earlier, about using your words to create, your reality. For me, it all started with writing. Just writing down my thoughts. It doesn't have to be poetry. It doesn't have to be a narrative. It doesn't have to be anything that you ever intend for anyone to read but yourself. But you'll find aspects of your own character in your writing when you go back and read it. You'll say, man, this is how my brain works. And the more you write, the more you draw, the more you create artistic things, the more you're exercising what we would call the feminine energy of artistry and creativity versus the math and science side. So, my girlfriend is, she's a very mystical person. She's an empath. She's an intuitive, and we always, talk about in our sort of tribe, our circle of friends and family and stuff, that she and I together, it's the math and the magic. I'm sort of the left brain math guy, and she's the more magical of the two, and that's such a that's just a perfect example of the masculine and feminine energies being balanced out. Is, you know, understanding the left and right brain principles, the masculine and feminine principles, and you can take that as far as you want. You know, you can look at our society. It's obviously a very left brain dominant society. A very, you know, we don't put a lot of emphasis on creating art with our kids. You know, my kids. I mean, I don't know how long it's been going on, but since I was in school, art is an elective. You know, we don't do a lot of literature analysis anymore. You know, but science and math are really big, and they're very poorly taught. You know, it's a left brain. It's a left brain teaching of a left brain subject in science and math. You know, here's math, here's how you do it, here's the structure, here's the way it works, right? So it's not just a left brain subject like math or science. It's a left brain teaching method that teaches it. That's just how far removed we've gotten from center on that. Whereas, you know, you could teach your kids, hey, here's 3 or 4 different ways to do some math, you know, or what is your opinion on this particular scientific theory, you know, instead of memorize these facts, and if you can memorize them properly in this structured way, and then regurgitate those into a test that you take in a square classroom with a square desk, with square ceiling tiles, with square floor tiles, with a square dry erase board on a square tablet or a square computer screen, and these regimented time schedules. I mean, this is extremely left-brained. It's extremely left-brained society, everything that we have, from the architecture to the teaching methods to the deadlines and the schedules and everything that we do. You know, and that's why I say it's hard for me sometimes to just wrap up, you know, in a linear fashion, you know, the description or the explanation of or the impact and importance of the masculine and feminine, because to me it's everything. It's all around us. It's everything. Our architecture is very square. We're very, you know, anyone who understands masculine energy, you understand that it travels in straight lines. Feminine energy travels in curved lines. So if you look at a lot of the Gothic architecture, you know, you see a lot of curves. If you look at Egyptian architecture, you see big circular pillars and vaulted ceilings, and you know, there's a blend of straight lines and curved lines. It's part of the balance. But you walk into a school or an office building these days, anywhere, and it's all square. It's cubes. Everything's cubicles. It's very male. It's not an environment that foments creativity and open-mindedness. That's why we use the term, you know, thinking outside the box. Well, it's very hard to get a kid or anyone to think outside the box when he's sitting in a cubicle, you know, and we're raised in cubicles. We go to school in cubicles. Everything is square and straight lines. And then we put them out into the world where they go sit in a cubicle, and, you know, and, yeah, the whole thing is just built on that. So understanding that first and foremost and getting the principles of masculine and feminine will allow you to analyze your own life, your own mind, your own personality attributes and stuff like that. And there are ways to exercise your right brain and find that balance by building creativity, listening to music, learning music, art, any of that stuff, even just reading books, you know, especially, you know, books on spirituality, practicing spirituality. All that stuff will help grow your right brain. And then at the same time, you got people like Ashley, my girlfriend, who and a lot of women and young women and people of all ages that reach out to her on Instagram or to me on Instagram. That, you know, it's not just that men need to become more right brain, but women, the feminine energy sometimes, especially in empathetic women, intuitive women, they can benefit from gaining some balance by you know, building a little bit more of their left brain too. And I've seen that happen countless times over the last couple of years since I've been looking for this. But, you know, if you have a right brain imbalance, and I've even got one of my good friends on Instagram who's a guy, and this is common too. You have or even my oldest son for that matter. So it's not just gender determined, but if you have a right brain imbalance, start enacting more regimens and schedules and habits and practices and exercises in your life that help you to follow more structure. You know, put reasonable deadlines on certain things in your life. Put a reasonable schedule together, you know, for your week or whatever. Those types of schedules and regiments will help you to gain more left brain balance. Learn to, again, going back to the drawing and stuff like that, learn to draw sacred geometry. That's something that, understanding the balance of the straight lines and the curved lines when you're drawing sacred geometry is extremely helpful. My kids and I do it all the time, and it has a profound impact in your brain. And whenever you unlock the power of the masculine and feminine within yourself, there's a balance there. It's really a blissful balance. And again, all the spirals in your life start within your own mind. And if you have that balance between masculine and feminine, left brain and right brain, if you have that balance, you'll begin to see the spirals in your life become more harmonic all the time. Always works.
I couldn't have said it better. I really could not have said it better myself. I feel like that's probably one of the most poignant ways to explain how important, like, really coming into ourselves is. Like, people don't. I feel like we've been systematically disenfranchised from this position to where we don't really, exercise these different parts of us. Like, hearing you talk, I'll put it to you this way: hearing you speak about, your relationship with your wife, or with your girlfriend, the math and the magic. You have one that is entirely mystical, entirely ambiguous, and then you have one that's, rigid, defined. This is how it is. That's the duality. That's the balance. And I think that's where a lot of people are kind of, that's where we're lost a little bit. I'll put it to you this way. Again, the podcast, we're very ambiguous. We're all over the place. We're always talking about different types of things, and this, that, and the third. But I am horrible when it comes to time management. However, my lady friend, my fiance, she is not. She is, this is when I have this to take care of, this is when I have this to take care of, this is when I have this to take care of, this is when I have this to take care of. And so I've had to grow in that mindset and to add a little bit of a little bit of rigidity into the podcast, add a little bit of structure, add a little bit of scheduling, because maybe it's the middle child, it might be the Aquarius nature, it might just be who I am. I'm a naturally very ambiguous person. So my whole mastery that I've learned growing up has had to be just that. Slowly find patience. I'm a very impatient person. Slowly learn discipline, learn mastery of self. Forever, I thought that I could just, throw everything together and, like a shotgun, it would just stick. Whatever I decided to do, it would stick. But the same way you talk about the Fibonacci sequence, that spiral of putting it out there, it's that consistency that creates more potency. And I've had to learn that, not only doing the podcast, but having, conversations with yourself or with people like yourself, and then even, looking deeper than myself, literally trying to iron out the different things that I have to do. So, I think, if anything, man, that is a perfect place to leave it off, because I definitely want to have you back on, and I want to talk about a lot of different things, because I feel like we only scratched the surface. But closing thoughts, what are some things you want to let the people know?
The biggest thing I want to let everyone know is that we're in such a special place in space and time right now. We're not only blessed to live in the bodies that we have and in the relationship we have to the world, but at this particular moment in time, what we're seeing is a reawakening of this Gnostic sort of enlightenment. It's the culmination of a lot of cosmic cycles that are coming together. And I know this sounds really woo-woo and all crazy and new agey and stuff, but the reality is there are a lot of cycles that are coming into a singularity right now, and a lot of prophetic messaging and stuff in the past can be confirmed through different scientific evaluation. We're living in a very, very special time, and if you pay attention to what's going on around you, pay attention to what's going on in your own mind, pay attention to the intent that you're holding in your mind and where your focuses lie, you'll find that your outlook is going to shape your reality. And this is the most important time ever, I think. I really do. That paying attention matters. And we have the ability to impact the world in a way and at a level that we just haven't in a very, very long time, maybe thousands and thousands of years, where collectively as a species we can raise the consciousness of the entire planet through education that we have and the ability to learn. I mean, all the information in the world is available at our fingertips. And be careful not to get caught in these angry echo chambers. You know, be careful not to surround yourself with negativity and give in to the reverberating effect, which can be, you know, it can superficially can feel rewarding, of just giving into it and cussing at everything around you, because we live in a really crazy time. It's really easy to overlook the fact that we live in a very beautiful place in the cosmos, and we have the ability to affect global change like never before, and it all starts within each one of us. So enlighten yourself, raise your vibes, manage your tribe, and always make time for yourself, because it all starts within. And the bad times are always going to pass, and find your place in the wavelength and go with the flow, man. That's it.
What is it? How does the quote go? Attention goes where energy flows, or energy flows where attention goes?
Energy flows where attention goes. That's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it, man.
That's
it.
Look
ahead. Picture beautiful things for yourself, and those beautiful things will come. And live in truth. A lot of us are not living in truth, and we think that we don't. That's not an option. You know, I always talk about getting stuck on the responsibility train. I was on that wagon for over a decade, but don't forego your passions and the desires of your heart. You know, that I think Ashley read me a quote today, and I'll leave it with this, but it was something to the effect of, to neglect your dreams and your passions is to commit suicide slowly. And that's so true. You know, life is short. We only have this one particular life. While we're here, it's a beautiful gift. Make the most of it. Be a positive influence to everybody. And I always want to leave everyone with the shamanic blessing of, let the light be upon you, and may peace be within you, and may you be a sun on the paths of all men. God bless you guys.
God bless you, Adam. Inlet.